It's your boy Sergeant Hunkton Henshins. So this is the second entry in our Rider Retrospective series. The first part talked about Kamen Rider Ghost, 3 separate parts of video series. And this time we're going to talk about one of my very favorites, near and dear to my heart, just like Ghost being my first season I watched, Kamen Rider X-Aid. It was the first driver I ever purchased myself. um, well, funny story with that, but we'll get there. And clearly Gashatto came with it. Started my whole love for collecting stuff and all of that. So, funny story with that, and get to this in just a second. I'll get to the main meat of this. Gamer Driver, I paid nothing for. There was a thing on Amazon where it was like, yeah, you can buy it or pay nothing if you qualify for some credit card, and I did it, and I did. I qualified, and I was like, okay, and I did it, and that started my journey into getting way too many Toku things. But anyway, this is a season that for some reason, similar to Ghost, and I feel like in a lot of ways more than Ghost sometimes, gets a lot of hate, and I don't really know why. I think it's a very vibrant, unique, bombastic, loud season, but then again, a lot of seasons are that way, so I don't quite understand. I think maybe the designs aren't for everybody. The designs all have these stylized eyes that look like anime, video gamey type eyes, and the main rider's like suit had a lot of pink and green and neon colors to it. So not everybody vibes with that. I love these suits, and I'll get there to that in that point in part two. But this part right here is going to focus on the main storyline slash the writing and the characters. So overall, I really enjoy the main narrative. I like this idea of this digital virus, the Bugster virus, that's affecting the real world, and these doctors who have to take it upon themselves to use the gamer driver along with a video game Gashat or cartridge, basically, slotted in it to transform and fight this virus, and that's how they save people's lives. I like that aesthetic, adding it into the monster of the week thing we see in Rider and in a lot of tokusatsu, but in Rider and Sentai for sure. So the aesthetic of that works really, really well. I like how I think they do a pretty clean balance between a medical drama and the video game aesthetic both. And like those together forming the Rider narrative, if you will, leaving room for fights, really well done fights, and cool effects, and awesome suits, and what have you. Yeah, I really enjoy the overall narrative. I like that at first we're gathering the riders together, learning who each of them are, how they relate to each other, and also in the background you have Kuroto Dan, who is the bad guy who created the Gashets, all the technology, but is actually secretly collecting data on everybody to create something else, the Kamen Rider Chronicle Gashet, and a plan for that. I think that Hojo Emu is a really good main character. He's definitely not annoying in any way. I like that he's an intern, and then he's got this side to him that like he's known as like a world-renowned gamer, but at the same time he also is really good at doing surgery stuff because of something within him, and I'll get to that point later, of that gives him this ability to be this strong. Like he's already really good at it, but like gives him this like extra edge. And I like how he's juxtaposed against somebody like Hero, who went to school his whole life to learn and like really pushed himself to be like this awesome doctor. And here comes this like, wet behind the ears doctor who's like, hey, guess I want to be a doctor, and he's like doing all these awesome things. He's like, how? How are you doing this? It's not fair. I think something like Taiga, who has his own kind of backstory and how the original like gamer driver system like affected him, and like the white stripe in his hair is from like trauma based off of it. Kiria, I think, had some like basically some uh, what's the term they use in doctors talk. Basically, he like botched a surgery or something like that and nearly killed somebody, or did, I think, something like that, and he was like ousted from being a doctor. And so he's really, yes, he's trying to figure out about this Bugster conspiracy, but he's also sort of half trying to like regain his reputation as a doctor because it's followed him throughout his whole life after that. Um, and Yeah, so those four main ones work really well together, and they really start to come together as a group and work well together and understand each other. The villains are pretty good too. The main villains that we have, also, sorry, with the heroes is Poppy, who is both a Bugster, a good Bugster, and has a human side of her that she can become. I think Asano was her name or something like that. Um, so kind of interesting thing where they have like this person who should be a bad guy but they're not, and they're helping the good guys. Kind of interesting. On the villain side, we have Kuroto Dan, of course. we have the Bugsters, so we have Parad, or Paradox, and then I know there's the other Bugster generals, and I can't remember all of their names. Only a few stand out. There was the one that was always tit for tat with Paradox. That I can't remember his exact name. He had a couple forms, and then he kind of got wiped out later. But the generals do stand out. I do remember Levelico being really funny, being like romance centered and everything, and some of the other ones. But the ones that end up near the end is Paradox, basically, and eventually this background villain of Game Deus, who is this originator of the Bugster virus, pretty much, and like the strongest Bugster, if you will. Um, but yeah, the setup of this virus affecting people and how they're attacking it and stopping it, and its connections to Emu that you find out eventually after the first arc comes through. We get into the second arc, which is Emu's secret, and you find out that Emu had been given the virus at one point, and that Paradox is actually his Bugster that infected him, and that's how he uh, has this other side of him, this M persona that he goes into when he's a professional gamer, and when he fights sometimes even. Um, and their connection is really interesting. That he's always seen at this point the Bugsters as a virus, as a villain, as a threat, as a bad thing, and now he understands. Oh my God, one's been living within me this whole time. And they do this whole effect where like Parag will take control of him and his eyes go red and whatever. And they eventually actually reform Parad, and he joined the team pretty much, and it actually works pretty well. Um, I wasn't so sure at first. I was like, are they going to do this? And then the way they did it, I was like, okay, I think that works. Um, so yeah, the villains actually are pretty strong. Some of the Bugster villains end up kind of falling to the wayside once we get to the main part with Kamen Rider Chronicle and Kuroto's dad Masamune. Essentially, Masamune was the one that Kuroto like pinned the whole Bugster virus original incident on, to like basically throw away any like cast away doubt on himself and put it all on his dad. And his dad got put in prison, so he took the fall for it pretty much. And then he somehow gets out. I can't remember exactly how it happens, but he gets out and retakes control of the company. And um, it's at this point that Kuroto Dan, because he gets defeated and you think he's dead, but he's not. He becomes like a virusy thing that can keep coming back. He has like a number of lives because it's video games, and I love this season. Um, so his dad, Kuroto's dad, Masamune, takes over as Kamen Rider Chronos. He uses the Kamen Rider Chronicle Gashat in a Bugster driver, right? Buggle driver, yeah, and becomes Kamen Rider Chronos. He can like stop time, reverse time, like all this crazy shit. It's insane. He's a real threat when he comes into play. He really is. Up to that point, like we'd had like some characters that were definitely a threat, but he changes it entirely, changes the game, if you will. But he's a pretty well developed villain also. Like you get why he's as awful as he is, and you understand why Kuroto Dan is the way he is if that's his dad. So I really enjoy that kind of narrative there, and how they're able to build and layer those two characters. And then it kind of sets Dan on like a pathway to want to just eliminate his dad because he thinks it's his company, and my control of my designs and blah blah blah. So I really enjoy that. I think that's really well put together. After that, we start getting into the Ride Player arc. I think is what it's called. Let me check my notes here. I'm prepared this time. Was not prepared with Ghost, of course. Yeah, yeah. So it's getting into the Kamen Rider Chronicle thing, which he puts out the Gashat, right? Dan does. I think Kuroto at first, and then eventually his dad does. And anybody that presses it becomes what's called a ride player, and it's seen as a game. If they tell them like any of you guys can defeat a Kamen Rider, you'll get extra points and everything, and a reward and whatever. And it's this big deal. So then you add this extra layer to the fights where the riders are trying to fight off these Bugsters, but in the middle of it, these ride players come in and are trying to get involved as well. And none of them get close to beating them, but it is an interesting like layer to add to it, that they don't want to beat these people that are normal people, but if they don't, they'll themselves be defeated and possibly killed. Because they have like a little, everybody has like a chest has like a little health gauge thing. It gets on to 0, they actually die, which is really fascinating. They do a really, this series is infamous even for having a main character die on Christmas Day. Kiria actually dies in that part, and then eventually he comes back. But it was really kind of shocking to see that, especially in a show that's aimed technically towards Japanese children. um, but it still like I still really liked it for that. A lot of people like either dropped it at that point or hated it because of that or didn't like that part. I thought it was cool, honestly. Um, they're all worried about hurting people, whatever. You get into the part where you add in Poppy into it. She becomes her rider form, Kamen Rider Poppy. That's it. Um, yeah, and that is really good because it's like it's an ally of Emo's, and he's like, "Oh God, please, I don't want to fight you." Um, and then we get into the really good stuff near the end because they're still getting their butts kicked by Masamune, Dan, and Kuroto actually is working with them and develops the Hyper Muteki Gashat, which I actually have. I should have brought it up, but I have a lot of things for Exade. Um, but it gives him invincibility, and it's really really cool. And this whole new form, Hyper Muteki, is such a beautiful suit. We'll talk about that in the next part. But this like progression of Emu's different forms from X8 level 1 gamer to uh, technically, I guess, Geki, with the one robots, Geki Toaster Robots or whatever it is, um, Mighty Brothers, Double X, to um, Ultimate Mighty, Max on Mighty X, yeah, Max on Mighty X, and then finally Hyper Muteki. It's a really nice build of power through those forms. I really like that, how they do that. And especially when you get some of the surprising things, like when Parad got his rider form, because he had like a Gashad that flipped between two forms, uh, breakout puzzle, and some kind of fighter game or whatever. And then he put it in. He basically found out that just as he had infected Emu, he actually imprinted some of Emu's like basically human DNA on himself because the gamer driver can only be used by a human. He finds out if he put that his Gashat into a gamer driver, he'd be stronger. Finds out he has some of Emu's data on him, so it makes him sort of human. Actually, leads in him being reformed later. But then we get Paradox Gamer level 99. It's a beautiful suit. The red and blues and stuff. It's really awesome. We'll talk about that later. But that was a really surprising rider form that I didn't expect to happen. And when it did, I was like, oh my god. His own henshin pose, his own music, finishers, everything. It's really, really cool. Um, so that was a really cool part of the story. And ending up with, them, the main four at least, Xaid, Snipe, Brave, and Laser. And I think Ganon actually helps too. Help defeat clearly they finally defeat Masamune Dan, actually Hyper Muteki does, and then eventually Game Deus, and end of the story right there. There's a true story, like true ending movie thing that had like this Kamen Rider Fuwa, I think, and then it was like this Hurricane Ninja Gashat. And there was like this other company that stole some stuff from Genom to create their own gamer driver in the Gashat, and they're trying to digitize humanity. This guy there becomes a super version of Game Deus. It was interesting. I didn't hate it, but it just went on a little too long. But it was cool. There was a really cool in the rain henshin scene between the main riders, all with lab coats on, doctor coats on. I thought that was cool. Um, but yeah, overall, it does a really good job of balancing the drama of the medical parts of saving people's lives and like different things people have going on in their lives. Not want to be saved, I do want to be saved, blah blah blah, with the video game aesthetic and the writer narrative they're trying to portray throughout. Most of the characters get some really great development all the way through. Some of the Bugster generals, like I said, get kind of left to the wayside because they don't even last to the end anyway. So that at first bothered me, but then when I realized they weren't going to last to the end of the series anyway, it didn't really take away too much. Um, like me, I can't remember. There was the one that was good friends with Paradox that was decently characterized. Um, but yeah, overall, I'd say the characters are great. I think the primary writer's awesome. I think the secondary and everybody else are pretty well put together. There's a lot of really good twists and turns in the story. I won't go over every single piece. But overall, I think the narrative is really strong. I think the characters are great, and they're just as like loud and vibrant and bombastic as the story. And I think that works because the overall aesthetic and kind of thing they're going for is a very lively, bouncy, jumpy, very um, unique and vibrant season. So I think they did a good job with that. There are serious parts. There are some really sad parts. There are some kind of scarier, horrifying-ish parts when you really think about things too much. Um, but overall, it's a really good season, and it has a really, really good narrative base to it. The writing is good. The dialogue is great, and overall, the characters are really strong. I really do think so. Um, So yeah, I think that'll probably wrap it up for this part of the Rider retrospective on Xaid. Following up this will be focusing on the aesthetics, so that's suits, belts, gimmicks, effects, forms, whatever, monsters as well, so the bugsters, and then also the music slash sound design. Both of which, those things are very strong in the season, in my opinion. It's some of the things I think kind of the fandom fights between if they hate or don't hate sometimes. But I've always loved Xaid and I always will because it's just very special to me. Clearly, with this being the first driver I ever got, clearly holds a special place. But yeah, so overall, like I said, I think the story and the writing and the characters are very well done. So hope to see you guys in the second part talking about aesthetics and music slash sound design. Like the video if you can. Watch all the way through, please. It'd be really nice. Subscribe. I'm already at 173 subscribers now. Climbing every day. Every time I look, it's a few more. So really happy about that, and definitely didn't expect that, and appreciate every one of you. But thank you for sharing, commenting when you guys can, liking the videos, all that jazz. Thank you guys so much, and for subscribing also. But yeah, until next time, stay hooked on Henshins. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye bye.